If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, where 100% of the listeners polled prefer to hear Joey and Holly rather than an angry goat.
Well, if you disagree with that, we'd sure like to hear from you.
But only today.
Only today.
Yep.
So cold frames are a device in which we can create, purchase, manufacture in our own backyards to extend the growing season of current crops and or plants in which we are starting now, not in October or November. First of all, what is a cold frame, Holly, and what do we need to know about it if we're going to make one?
Sure. So within this cold frame realm, I'm also going to include low tunnels, because low tunnels are like the low maintenance version of cold frames. So cold frame or low tunnel is something that houses, you put it around your garden, around some crops.
Would you say it's a mini greenhouse?
Yeah, it's kind of like a mini greenhouse. Okay. And you put it around your crops, or you plant crops within that area, and it extends your season. So basically, you can grow year-round some things with that cold frame or that low tunnel, and you can extend your season into the fall, later into the fall or winter, or start it sooner into the spring. Okay. So it's basically, it can be made with plastic. It's like, we just bought drip cloth plastic from the
6 mil.
6 mil.
It's a milky, it's not going to be see-through like glass. It's a milky film
right,
on it.
Yeah, it's not completely transparent. So, and you can do anything from like putting straw bales around a perimeter of something and making sure it's kind of sealed off and putting old windows on top. Or you can build a cold frame, as we did with some old wood and an old screened-in window. And then we attach that plastic. Or you could do something like a low tunnel where you take hoops, small hoops, whatever you have. You could use like old fence poles or whatever, and then you drape the plastic over that and then make sure it's anchored down.
So whichever device in which we choose to put over the crops in which we have started or starting or have been growing, we need to make sure that on cool days, let's say it's 65 degrees outside, because of convection, it could be 85, 90, or 100 plus degrees in this low tunnel, this cold frame, which will kill the plants in which you're growing. Now, in the winter months, November, December, January, when it's 15 or 10 degrees outside, the internal temperature of that cold frame, because of the convection of the sun and the heat radiation, all that, maybe 50 or 60, which is perfect. But we want to keep aware of what it currently is now. So
now, for each layer of cold frame or plastic or whatever, you extend your growing season, or you move your
growing zone
down 1.5 or up 1.5 zones. So right now we're about zone 5. So if you add one layer, that puts us to 6.5, which is typically like
Southern Illinois. Okay. So if we did a small tunnel, and then over top of that small tunnel, we had a foot or so gap, and we created another tunnel on top of that. Now we have 2 layers of protection.
Now we're at zone 8.
We're in zone 8, which is northern Mississippi, somewhere in that area. So again,
but if it's winter, you're experiencing like winter in northern Mississippi, which is like kind of like spring, I would say, for us.
Right. So what do we want to know about what we're putting or what we're covering? What plants can we grow? How do we grow them to get the longevity out of them that we are putting in this cold frame?
Okay, so you're certainly not growing tomatoes, like anything that's tropical, typically like a tomato, pepper.
The summer crops we're not doing.
Yeah, the super summer crops, you're not going to be doing that. But the fall crops, so things like, or spring crops, so things like lettuce, you can even do carrots, radishes.
A lot of your greens.
A lot of your greens. All of those are definitely able for you to grow microgreens, all of that good stuff, because they are a little bit more cold hardy and a little bit more tolerant, especially of the cold soil below, and it allows for proper growing.
Now, if you want to go and find out the precise details, you go to your favorite search engine and look up Nikki Jabor, or look up the Year-Round Vegetable Gardener. She does this in Nova Scotia, Canada, cold frames year-round. We've had her on the program as a guest this year and last year. So when do we want to get these crops growing, or if we have crops already, what do we want to do?
You can start basically right now.
Okay.
Like radishes, not right now because those only take like 30 days, but probably within the next month you could get those started.
Well, yeah, radishes you will start in September. By October, you've got them harvested. You can start another crop in October and have them November harvest there.
But you have to think about when your first frost or freeze is going to be. So for us, it's mid-October, so you would want to do a lot of these things like mid-September.
Our first frost is mid-October. Our first freeze, flip a coin, when that might be. So if we put kale in the ground, if we put greens in the ground, kale and cabbage, that type of thing, broccoli, cauliflower, we want to keep in mind that as these plants grow, they're going to get taller. So we can't make a cold frame that's 7 inches tall when these plants may get 24 or 28 inches tall. We don't want these plants to rub up against the plastic or the top of the lid of the device in which we are creating, because that will absorb the coldness and actually kill that portion of the plant during the cold months that we're trying to get the longevity out of it. A perfect example of this type of system in which we're speaking about, there is a individual that is out of the Chicago area. He's got a YouTube channel. It's called 1 Yard Revolution, and he is a vegetarian, and him and his wife, they grow year-round in essentially a walk-in cold frame with other cold frames inside of that cold frame to get that double protection, which we were speaking about. So it's a very, he's got it down to a science that he understands this mechanism of a cold frame. Now, a low tunnel is the same thing. Now, since we're in this aspect of protection of plants, let's talk about what frost cloths are, because people may hear that and think, oh, I'll just use a frost cloth to make a dome and I can grow into the winter months without any issue.
Right. So frost cloth is different. It's typically, it's more porous, is what it is. So it doesn't have that non-porous quality as plastic does. So if
it's a webbed mesh.
Yeah, it's like a web mesh,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So you want something like plastic, definitely, because that's going to help keep that warmth in.
A frost cloth is designed to protect your cooler weather crops later in the fall. If when it frosts or freezes, if it freezes at 32 degrees, this frost cloth is laid on top of the crops or draped over top of the crops, and it protects the crops so they don't freeze, and it has a 6 or 7 or 10 degree protection over the crops. So now the crops are not going to freeze until 23 or 24 degrees instead of 32 like we're accustomed to.
It's kind of like when you throw your sweater on to run to the car in the middle of winter. You're not spending a lot of time outside, but it's a little protection. It's going to make you a little bit more comfortable. Something like using that plastic is going to be like wearing your actual winter jacket, where it's going to keep you nice and warm.
Now, if we've already got crops growing in the ground and we're going to cover them, we're kind of limited on where we can put this cold frame. We've got to put it over top of the crops in which we're growing.
Yes, you kind of have to plan ahead, and that's definitely why we're talking about this.
If we're going to plant this weekend, to plan ahead to put cold frames over what we're going to plant, where do we want to plant these crops at, Holly?
Sure. So you want to find the sunniest spot in your yard, and you're like, well, that's where my tomatoes are right now. But maybe you can find another sunny spot.
Partial shade now.
Yeah.
A lot of these crops in which we're growing will handle partial shade, and they will, as the leaves fall off, they're going to be more exposed to the sun, and you want the device in which you're planting in to face more southerly if you can. I had a question a couple of weeks ago about the slant on a cold frame. If we can create one, we want to slant it towards the southern sky as the hemisphere, as we change from winter to fall to summer, spring,
right.
Winter, fall, that the axis changes in where we're at in the northern hemisphere.
Right, yeah. So that's what the winter solstice is because of how the Earth is on the axis and the shifts, and that's why we go from that solstice happens, the winter solstice, and same thing with summer solstice. But either way, you do want to be aware. You definitely don't want to keep it into a shady spot. Now, the other thing is that even though we have shadier spots now, in a few months, fall is going to happen, so you'll have more sun in that shadier spot. So you can think about that too.
Let's talk about cost. What are we looking at cost?
The cost is kind of a build your own adventure there. You definitely want the plastic. That's going to be a cost. It's not terribly expensive.
No, it's kind of like what we talked about in the first segment with building your soil. However, you can go very limited, or you can spend a lot of money based on how large of cold frame or greenhouse or whatever you want to put over your crop.
Right, and you can definitely look for old windows on the side of the street and all that good stuff.
Thank you for checking out the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. For more, go to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for full-length in-studio video and podcast replay of Season 1. Season 2 underway and added weekly. Tweet us at TWVG Show or hashtag TWVG to be part of the program.